Good afternoon, everybody. It's David Schlotthauer here with another detailed tropical weather outlook and discussion for Wednesday, August 27th, 2025. Now, if you haven't been here before and you do find these tropical weather outlook and discussions very detailed, helpful, informative, and life-saving, please don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel. Hit that bell notification icon to get daily tropical weather updates, including live stream coverage on any landfalling hurricane or tropical system in the United States within 2 days, including for the Caribbean. Hit that like button and share this video with their family and friends on social media. Now, when we take a look here at the tropical Atlantic for Wednesday afternoon on the 27th of August, 2025, there's not a whole lot to monitor out there right now in the tropical Atlantic, all thanks to a lot of dry Saharan air layer that is moving off of Africa. We have a lot of anticyclonic wave breaking, bringing all of this drier air in from higher latitudes and keeping things very much suppressed out here in the subtropical, the deep tropical Atlantic, as well as much of the Caribbean, as well as the Gulf, which is great news to see, because as we go into about the 11th and the 12th of September, I do still believe we're going to have a lot to track out there in the tropics, just in time for the peak of the Atlantic hurricane season, which happens on September the 10th of this year. So keep that in mind. Things are nice and quiet now, but the quiet is not going to last very long at all. So with that being said, let's take a look now at our latest global computer deterministic models. First, looking at the European here, the 12Z output that was released a few hours ago. And what we're looking at here is the cyclonic relative vorticity plot at 5,000 feet. Our wind barbs tell us which way the wind is blowing from. These lines tell us what part of the atmosphere has higher heights, which means increased ridging, and where there's lower heights, increased troughing. So this is a topographical map showing us we have a big old sprawling ridge of high pressure out here in the Atlantic. Lots of lower pressures up here to the north near Greenland. And so now that you know how to read the map, let's put this into motion, because this, my folks, is what we're looking for right here. There's Tropical Storm Fernand. We're looking for something that looks like that down here in the deep tropics of the Atlantic. Okay. So now going into the next couple of days here, nothing to be concerned about at all on our vorticity plot. Nice, good sprawling ridge out there across the Atlantic. The Azores, the Bermuda High, really working strong here at keeping things nicely suppressed. Drier air coming in from higher latitudes, keeping things from blowing up out there in the deep tropics, which is nice to see, especially when we end August and enter into September, which is typically a very active part of the hurricane season. Over the next 4 days, we're not seeing anything. So all the way through the weekend into Labor Day, which is Monday here on the 1st of September, looking really nice and quiet to start the new month, which is nice, right? We could have a lot of activity now. Remember back in 2020, this was littered with a lot of systems. Not this go around. This is a very quiet early September, late August period that we're entering, and that's going to continue over the next 7 days. I don't see anything discernible, although we are going to need to watch what goes on off the eastern seaboard. It's a little bit of subtropical mischief. I'm not too concerned about it, because if anything does develop, it is going to go out to sea quite quickly and not bother anybody. A lot of fish storms this year, which is nice. Not many landfalls. We only had a couple so far this hurricane season. And let's hope that trend continues, that we see a lot of fish storms, a lot of early exits here to the north. Now, there is a little bit of a tropical wave that we will need to watch out to about 7 days. The NHC not talking much about this because there is very low confidence of it actually occurring. And so, therefore, there is low confidence, in my opinion, that that actually develops. But as we go out to day 10, which is as far out as I am going to go for many reasons, this is for Saturday morning on the 6th of September. We have a weak tropical wave that does try to get its act together. We have another strong tropical wave coming off of Africa. And just because it shows a tropical storm there right off the coast of Africa in about 10 days, it's not going to happen. This is very convectively biased from the Euro, showing a tropical storm over land, which is not even possible. So that is there's going to be a tropical wave, but it's not going to be that strong at all. Like the Euro is going a little crazy at developing that system way too early than not versus this system out here. So therefore, we'll have to keep an eye on the tropics as we go into about the 8th and the 9th of September, especially because that's when I believe things are really going to get heated up out there. Now, you might be wondering, why is it so unfavorable out there in the deep tropics of the Atlantic and even in the subtropics? Well, we can blame it all on the dry, warm, stable Saharan air that is in place right now. Look at all of this brown that you see on the screen. That indicates lots of dry air in the deep layers of the atmosphere from about 10,000 feet above the surface to about 34,000 feet above the surface where jet plane commercial airliners fly. So this is why things are not going to be able to develop out there in the deep tropics because of how stable the air mass actually is. And this is basically the unfavorable side of the Madden-Julian oscillation, or the MJO, that whatever is left with it is very incoherent right now at this point, and it's going to remain that way for a while. And so as we go into late August and early September here, over the next, say, 7 to 10 days, things are just not going to really be very active out there because, again, look at all of this dry air that is in place off of Africa over the deep tropical Atlantic. We have a little bit of moisture right there, a little bit of moisture right here, but nothing what we were seeing when Hurricane Aaron or Tropical System Aaron came off of Africa. Remember all that moisture that it was ingesting? That's why it was able to hold together. But not this go around with this plot with a lot of dry air, a lot of brown on the screen. On top of that, we also have a little bit of wind shear, southwesterly vertical wind shear that is going to play a role in all of this, especially as we go into early September. Take note here of all of this southwesterly and westerly vertical wind shear. This is not what we need to see. This is unfavorable conditions, folks. This is not really conducive at all for any tropical formation as long as you have this westerly vertical wind shear that is in place. A lot of anticyclonic wave breaking. You can see a trough right here trying to break off, another bit of a trough here, and then another tut cell over the Caribbean. And this really keeps the southwesterly vertical wind shear going to the southeast out of these troughs, and that's going to continue all the way for the next 10 days. Just really, I just don't see a lot of favorability. That's in my own opinion. You might say otherwise, that David, it's the peak of hurricane season. We really got to watch every model run. Yeah, we do, but I am pretty confident that at least through early September, I don't think we're going to see anything to be worried about. Nothing is going to form. We are not seeing a hurricane or major hurricane at least through the first 4 to 6 or even 7 days of September. Now, when we take a look at our latest ensemble models for today, we can see first from the European ensemble, all 51 members that run the ensemble forecast, and it is showing there is a slight signal here for tropical development around the 10-day mark. This would be for the 6th and the 7th of September, which I sort of disagree with right now just because of a unfavorable background state of the MJO. We don't have a whole lot of convective coupled Kelvin wave activity moving across much of the Atlantic at this given time. And climatology would really be the only thing that I can think of right now that would overwin those two other factors for tropical development. And so therefore, there is a minute signal out of this according to the latest European model, showing at least a tropical depression chance there in about 10 days. Looking at the GEFS ensemble, and this is why there is a lot of disagreement, literally there is no signal. There is no signal out in the MDR at all whatsoever in about 10 days, including for the Caribbean and the Gulf, which is a very slim possibility. All right. Now, when we take a look here at our AI-based forecast, you can see it is not as aggressive as what the European ensemble is showing, and showing mainly just a very weak tropical depression with winds of about 30 to 35 miles an hour. So right now, I am not concerned. I am not raising the alarm bell right now for any tropical activity that is anticipated here over the next 10 days, despite the European ensemble being quite aggressive here, showing a couple of members showing even a hurricane that could form, which again, I strongly disagree with. Now, when it comes down to the chances of a tropical cyclone or tropical depression to strike a given area within an 8-day period, you can see here for September 1st on Monday through Monday, September the 8th, there is a low to medium chance for tropical development out there in the central and eastern main development region of the Atlantic, where you can see some yellow and green indicating a 30 to 50% chance of tropical development. Now, as we go into Monday, September the 8th through Monday, September the 15th, this is pretty much when I expect things to really get going out there in the MDR, especially in the southwestern Atlantic, where there is a 20 to 30% chance of tropical development. And then, of course, right off the coast of Africa, there is a 60% chance of tropical development in that time frame. So really, once we get into the middle of September, I think is when we're going to see a lot of activity really waking up there. And then going forward into about the 15th of September on a Monday through the 22nd on Monday, which is the first day of fall. So we're nearly 3 weeks out from this time. And we can get an idea that there is very elevated chances here, about a 50 to 60% chance still off the MDR for tropical development. And some of that could work its way into the Caribbean and into the Gulf as well as Southwestern Atlantic. And we go forward, things get even more increasingly possible over here in the Southwestern Atlantic near the Bahamas, the Dominican Republic, Cuba, as well as Jamaica, into say Puerto Rico, as well as the Northwestern Caribbean, where we typically favor this area quite well during the latter part of September into early October. So we're definitely going to be watching the tropics, especially from about the 10th and the 11th of September and beyond. Now, because of this, the Global Tropics Hazards Outlook from the Climate Prediction Center does illustrate that there is a 20% low chance of tropical development out there in the main development region, especially east of the Leeward Islands for September the 3rd through the 9th, with a low to medium chance of tropical development out there in the central main development region between September 10th and the 16th. This is going to be the area that we really need to watch. Also across the Southern Gulf and the Northwestern Caribbean is where I think we are going to need to really start watching very closely, because by the latter part of September into early and mid-October, that's when the Central American gyre starts getting going again as we get into fall. And that's where we start watching for activity there. And the MDR typically closes down as we go into latter part of September. Therefore, enjoy the quiet while it lasts, because once we go into the middle to the end of September, that's when it's going to be quite busy. In the meantime, looking at the latest 7-day graphical tropical weather outlook from the National Hurricane Center, and you can see, again, very blank map down here, no highlighted areas, and the one and only tropical system that we have that's hanging on for dear life is Tropical Storm Fernand, which has 50-mile-an-hour winds, pressures up now to 1,006 millibars, and it is moving to the east-northeast at around 15 miles per hour. This is not going to bother anybody anytime soon, only for shipping interests. So if you're cruising, if you're a cargo cruiser liner, just be aware of this system that has 50-mile-an-hour winds. And so it's producing a little bit of surf around it, but nothing like we had with Aaron. So now let's move on and talk about the extended forecast and the background favorability in the Atlantic, when things will get favorable. So looking at the European ensemble prediction system here, the velocity potential anomaly, and this is a Hov-Moeller diagram showing what parts of the deep tropics are favorable and what parts are not favorable. And so anything in orange here is deemed unfavorable for the tropical Atlantic, especially once we get into the peak of hurricane season. Things here are not typically favorable, but we do have a weak passing of a convective coupled Kelvin wave that you see here that is going to be moving east. throughout the Eastern Pacific into the main development region through the first week of September, but that's not really going to contribute to a lot of development because there is a little bit of sinking motion here in the central and eastern MDR during this time frame. It's not going to be until we get into the middle of September. So roughly from about in here is when I think things are going to be very conducive for tropical development, because you can see a weak convective coupled Kelvin wave gets the lead and gets started in the Eastern Pacific yet again by about the 8th and the 9th of September, and then moves across the Atlantic by about the 10th and the 11th of September is when I think it's going to get very active. And of course, more activity expected to increase once we go into the 16th, the 17th, and the 18th of September, and then more so as we go into the late September into early October. And again, this is the peak of the Atlantic hurricane season. So we do have to take this into consideration because we could have a lot of tropical activity, something that we have not experienced yet this season. Although we did have Aaron, we did have a couple of systems, but really not a big deal compared to with what we could be facing as we go into the middle to the end of September into early and mid-October. On top of that, sea surface temperatures are extremely favorable out there, especially in the Gulf, where we have widespread sea surface temperatures that are at least 86 degrees or higher. Boy, across the eastern Gulf, off the coast of Florida, like Tampa, Florida, Sarasota, Key West, Florida, water temperatures are in the upper 80s, right around 88 to 89 degrees Fahrenheit. In fact, there could be a couple of areas here, especially over the Bay of Youth as well as Key West, that could have temperatures locally at around 90 degrees Fahrenheit. So there is a lot of heat energy being stored in the Gulf and the Northwestern Caribbean. And when you take a look here at the actual sea surface temperature anomalies, boy, the entire Gulf right now is as warm as it can possibly get here, with sea surface temperatures running at around 1 to 2.5 degrees above the long-term average, which is very, very concerning. And I don't care if you guys say I'm fear-mongering, causing panic. You need to be afraid of this. This is a lot of heat energy being stored deep into the Gulf. All right. And if we get like a Milton or an Ian-like track or a Laura later in this season, especially in the middle to the back half of the hurricane season, it's going to be able to have a lot of heat energy to work with. And so that is why I am really concerned about this. I know a lot of you are saying, oh, there hasn't been anything in the Gulf or the Caribbean so far this season. Doesn't mean there won't be as we go into the latter part of September into October. All right, so keep that in mind. It's not over until the 30th of November, which is the last day of this year's hurricane season. So looking at the actual sea surface temperatures, I mean, they are just as warm as they can get. This is about the time when those sea surface temperatures are peaking at their maximum amplitude right now with their warmest, especially in the Gulf and the Caribbean, where water temperatures are still warming up quite sufficiently. And it does appear right even in here, water temperatures just south of Miami, Florida, are about 32 to 33 Celsius, or about 89 to 91 degrees Fahrenheit. So boy, oh boy, if we get anything out of the MDR that tracks like this, gets into the Gulf, or does something like what we had with Aaron, it is going to be a big problem. We could see explosive intensification. Given if the background cooperates very well, we get a lot of diffluence aloft, the air spreads out, we get lower pressure, things could get ugly very, very fast. Okay, I want to make that very clear in this video. Now, when we take a look here at the sea surface temperature anomalies, I don't know how much more favorable you can get with a sea surface temperature configuration. Mark Sedeth has talked about this. Philip Klocksbog has talked about this, Andy Hazelton, Eric Webb, Ben Knoll, as well as Michael Lowry, Andrew Moore has been talking about this. These are people that I know that I can trust really well. They're hurricane experts. And I will tell you what, and I'm being straight up honest, not to cause a lot of hyperbole or fear-mongering, but this is as favorable of a sea surface temperature configuration you can probably get. Very warm subtropics down here and deep tropics, especially right around 25 degrees north in latitude further to the south, really just blanketing much of the MDR. Just literally look at all the orange. Very, very warm Iberian Peninsula. Very warm Northeast Atlantic. So you can really paint this whole area right in here. Very classic horseshoe shape here, indicating that sea surface temperature configuration here is extremely favorable to give us a very, very, very busy September, especially, again, beyond the 11th of September, all the way out into the middle of October is when I think we're going to have the majority of our activity. Even going into late October, perhaps, wouldn't even be surprising because of this look, this horseshoe shape. Warm down here, Iberian Peninsula, really cold subtropics now, much cooler than they should be, all thanks to Aaron. Now we had Fernand to turn up the waters even more. I mean, you just can't get any more favorable than this. And like I said, we have a long way to go. We really do, and we have to be ready to get prepared for a very busy season. Even so, things are quiet now. I've seen a lot of people say, oh, the season's done, let's ignore it. That's pretty foolish because it's not the peak. The peak is September the 10th. The very top of the mountain is, so to speak. That doesn't mean that's when we'll see the most activity. Maybe the peak is going to be a week later, maybe September the 15th and the 17th. So now on top of that, sea surface temperature anomalies out here in the eastern and central Pacific have cooled off very significantly. We have a fairly strong La Nina taking place with sea surface temperature anomalies here off of Peru that are running at about 2 to 3 degrees Celsius below the long-term average. And that on top of this, folks, this and this really gives us a very busy season. And there's no way to believe that this season is going to end out with very far below average activity. I think a near average to slightly above average season is looking more likely. Now, looking at the sea surface temperature change over the last couple of weeks, and you can see some of these anomalies here, the dark blues and purples indicate sea surface temperatures have dropped, have tanked as much as 4 to 6 degrees cooler than it was about a week ago, or 2 weeks ago, that is, which is pretty significant. And that is why September and October are going to be very busy months, I believe. That on top of lots of upper ocean heat content. Actually, let's do this first. I mean, look at how much heat there is being stored in the ocean. This is ridiculous. In the northwestern, central Caribbean, in the Gulf, I mean, we're seeing values greater than 170, all the way up to as high as 200. And some of these anomalies right here that I'm circling in are in excess of 200, as high as 225 units, which is more than enough to support at least 2 or 3 Category 5 hurricanes, and still not really upwelling much in the way of cooler water like Aaron did. So that is why we really need to watch this. This is really concerning me a lot, especially when we get into this back half of the hurricane season. And look at the upper ocean heat content anomalies. Just about anywhere you look here is above average. So we are just waiting for the game, waiting for things to get into our favor for a busy period coming by the middle to the end of September. But anyways, if you haven't been here before and you did find today's tropical weather outlook and discussion very helpful, detailed, informative, and life-saving, please don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel if you haven't already. Hit that bell notification icon to get all of my daily tropical weather updates, including live hurricane coverage with any landfalling tropical storm or hurricane in the United States or the Caribbean within 24 to 48 hours. You can get nonstop coverage here on the channel only if you do subscribe, hit the like button, and hit the bell icon, and share this video with their family and friends on social media. As always, have a great rest of your Wednesday on the 27th here of August 2025. I'll be back with you more tomorrow with another tropical update.